The 23rd Psalm, which you know quite well, and I'm not going to bother to read it for you. You can look it up and follow along. We may put snippets of it onto the screen before you. But you may care to notice that the first person starts off at the beginning and at the end and in the middle. The Lord is my shepherd at the beginning, and at the end, surely goodness and mercy will follow me, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And in the middle, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. So I, in the middle, in the beginning, the middle, at the end. And in between those three, it's third person. He makes me to lie down in green pastures, so on. And then between the middle and the end, we have second person. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. The whole thing is put together in 7 little cameos and has a completion to it that is extremely powerful and meaningful, and has been for the church all across the centuries. Let's look just briefly at what this great psalm is really all about. It starts off by saying, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." David himself was a shepherd, and he knows that the minute you leave the village and you go off into the open wilderness, you are on your own. The Lord is my shepherd means I have no police protection. There's no cell phone, and nobody's going to find you in case there are thieves or robbers or an attack of a pack of wolves. Most of us don't have chances to live in that kind of a world. It was my privilege to live in that kind of a world during the Lebanese Civil War. The water was turned off in the mains and the electricity was off, and the police had disappeared from the streets, and the army had fallen apart, and the National Guard did not exist, and the telephones no longer worked, and you couldn't phone anybody, and there was nobody to answer if you could. And the only security you had was a group of you would get together and try and get some guns and protect your own quarter. And there were 150 private militias wandering around the city of Beirut, in which I lived at that time. And you knew that the Lord is my shepherd. The only protection you have is beyond the ordinary forces of protection that we are accustomed to. It's okay. The Lord is my shepherd. And that's what this thing is all about. In the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, I think really is somebody going off into that kind of a world. When 3 cars get together and the person at the front knows where you're going, nobody else does, you feel the inner pressure to tell the driver in the first car, "Hey Joe, don't get us lost." When you say that, you're not worried about whether Joe's going to get you lost. If you were, you wouldn't follow him. What you're trying to say is, we have no idea where we're going. You're the only guy who does. That's why you're in the lead car. And if you get us lost, we're in big time trouble because we're not going to know how to get out of it. We say that to God as we start off in that journey out into that wilderness. Don't get us lost. Fully confident that we can follow him and we won't get lost. All right, then it goes on. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. It rains in the Middle East. I lived there 40 years. Only rain comes in November, and then you've got rain in November and December, a little bit in January, and by early February, everything is brown. And then it's brown again until the next November. So you've got green pastures 2 months a year, or 2.5 if you're lucky, and the other 9 to 10 months, it's nothing but dry pastures. Nothing but grass. Not good stuff if you're an animal that eats these things. So green pastures means absolutely the best. Then it says, he leads me. We've got bad shepherds in the Middle East. They throw stones at their sheep and they drive them with sticks. But a good shepherd doesn't do that. The good shepherd is out in front, and the good shepherd has a little call or a little tune on a pipe that lasts about 10 seconds. I've watched these kind of shepherds do this in the mountains of Lebanon and also on the West Bank in Israel, Palestine, and I've chatted with them about their task. I remember one Lebanese shepherd. He was alone with 500 sheep, no dog and no assistant shepherd. He just simply slowly walked in front of them, and about every minute he gave his little 10-second call, and the calls sound something like this. باركي يا نفسي ربا ولا تنسي كل حسناته باركي يا نفسي ربا باركي يا نفسي ربا باركي يا نفسي ربا باركي All right, you're one of my sheep. You know that. You nibble, 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 nibble. Gets kind of faint. You hear it. You take off a shot and you follow. And that's the language that's being used here. So he gives me green pastures. That's the best food there is. And he leads me beside still waters. Sheep are not quite as stupid as we think they are. They do know that they have wool on their backs. And if the water is moving, then there might be a pit there. And if they fall into it, the water is going to get into their wool. It will pull them underwater. And in 1 minute, they're going to be drowned. So even though the water may be only that deep, they're not going to drink from it unless it's still, because they might lose their footing. So the imagery is we are provided with the finest food, and we are adequate food, and we are provided also with the water, which we are able to drink. In the Lord's Prayer, we've got this famous phrase, give us today we translate it daily bread, epiousion, but nobody knows what epiousion really means, and the early fathers had 4 different translations, and the one that I think that is closest to the truth is the Old Syriac, which calls it the Amen bread. Lahmo amino hablen yaumaden. It kind of rhymes in Aramaic as well, the Aramaic of Jesus. And what it means is, give us the bread today that doesn't run out. Deliver us from the fear lest we will not have enough, lest tomorrow it's not going to be there. This is one of the primary fears of the human soul. I got enough for today, but am I going to be okay tomorrow? People launch wars, they create monsters, they do call all sorts of horrible things to other people out of this fear. The Psalm says that it is God who delivers me from the terror of this gnawing fear that tomorrow I'm not going to have enough. Then we're told he brings me back. We say, thou restoreth my soul. But actually there's a concrete image in there. We have a great tendency to take the concrete images of the Bible and turn them into abstractions. The concrete image is that there's a lost sheep and the shepherd is going to go after that sheep, and my shepherd friends tell me that a sheep once lost is terrified and it crawls under a bush or under a rock somewhere and makes a lot of noise hoping the shepherd will hear it. The shepherd knows this, and the shepherd's got to get there in a hurry, because if he doesn't, a wild animal will also hear and come and eat the beast. You got to find it. Once you find it, it can't even stand up. Its legs have turned to rubber, and you can't pull it and you can't push it, and that's it. You can't call it. How are you going to get it home? You're going to pick it up over your shoulders. That's the only way you're going to get it back to the village. So what is the shepherd talking about? The shepherd, what is the hymn talking about? It's talking about the price that is paid of the shepherd that picks up that sheep and carries it back to the village. I have discovered 2 statues of this reality from very early centuries in the Eastern Christian world, and usually they carve a statue of a huge sheep that's almost the body weight of the shepherd. And I have a picture of one of those from a museum, the Rockefeller Museum, just north of the old city of Jerusalem. And you can see this now on your screen. And please notice the size of the sheep and the size of the shepherd. And the shepherd is smiling. He's happy to be picking up this burden. There is then a second image that is from a monastery in Egypt, and you have the same thing. The sheep is large and the shepherd is smiling. A third image of this is a carving that was actually carved for me by a special carver in Bethlehem who made a large sheep and a smiling shepherd to indicate this same theme. And the fourth is an icon that was painted by an icon painter in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, especially for me. Some of my students arranged for this. And notice, please, that in this icon that there are nail holes in the hands of the shepherd. He has paid a price to bring that sheep back. And as I look at that icon and into the eyes of that shepherd, I see the shepherd saying, do you now understand the price that I had to pay to carry you home? I think it's a beautiful icon, and I'm honored to have it. All right, why does he do this? He does it for his name's sake. God comes after me, picks me up, and carries me back because his own inner integrity requires that he should do so. The only place that's really, I find this picked up in the long Christian tradition, is in a hymn written by St. Columba, who went from Ireland to Scotland in the 6th century. And in his hymn, which we still sing, "The King of Love my Shepherd is," in the 3rd stanza it reads, "Perverse and foolish oft I strayed, but yet in love he sought me, and on his shoulder gently laid, and home rejoicing brought me." That picks up the theme of the shepherd going after the lost sheep that cannot make it home. When the shepherd goes after the sheep, that's Bethlehem and the incarnation. When the shepherd picks up the sheep and pays a price to carry it back to the village, that's Jerusalem and atonement and our salvation. All right, now we find that he also has a rod and a staff. A rod is kind of a mace. He can drive off wild animals. And the staff is a crook. He can get me back on the path in case I get lost. One will protect me from the outside. Other will keep me on the straight and narrow on the inside. And then finally, he prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. He doesn't care who my enemies are. He shows honor to me, and we indeed, and he will pay a price for that table. And the Eucharist is in celebration of a table spread for us at great cost by the host. And finally, goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. Doesn't mean I move into the back of the temple. It means that all of creation is for me now the house of the Lord, and I'm not going to dump my garbage in all of creation any more than I would dump my garbage in the middle of the church where I worship. All of creation is the house of the Lord, and ecology for me is high on the list because the house of the Lord is the place where I now live. All right, that's the Good Shepherd, God the Good Shepherd.